Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Midnight's Edge After Dark. I'm Tom Connors. With me is Script Doctor, as always, on A-rated B movies and B-rated A movies. How you doing, Script Doctor?
I'm doing well. It's December. It's the appropriate Christmas season.
That's right.
To talk about Christmas stuff, and I'm glad to be here, and great to see everyone in the chat. Hope you're all having a good weekend so far.
Yeah, it's Saturday. It's 6 where I'm at, and most places in the U.S. is around that time. But wherever you're at, hit that like button, share the link out, let people know we're live. So yeah, we're going to talk about a Christmas classic that wasn't necessarily a Christmas classic at the time it came out, but we'll get into that. But first and foremost, let's say hello to some of the folks in the chat. I see J. Roar, Cornholio Snatch. That's a neat name. D. Bud Martin, J. Roar, Donnie Pearson, Vasco Zuzuz. Who else we got here? We got Sean Estep, Dearest, so many more. Hit that like button. Donnie Pearson, how you doing? Mark's 47, D-Bud Martin's swinging around the wrench, so he'll be sharing out all the links tonight. Thank you so much for that, D-Bud. And yeah, this is a film. Like, I got a little funny story. One of my exes told me this story once when she was little. There was a movie called Johnny Get Your Gun. I don't know if you're familiar with this movie or not.
Title sounds familiar, but I don't know if I've seen it or not.
Like an R-rated violent film, from what I remember hearing about it. And their mother mistook it for A Christmas Story, so she dumped the kids off at the theater for the afternoon so she could go Christmas shopping, because there was like varying ages from like 13 down or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up watching this movie thinking it was A Christmas Story. Boy, wasn't it. It was not. So let me see if I can find an image so you guys can have an idea what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's a 1971 film, actually.
And it was playing in the theaters.
A war movie. Yeah, like, well, where we live, they did do a lot of like revival stuff in that era. So, because like if there wasn't anything else out that they could get their hands on, they would show older films. And there might have been something going on at the time that it's a Dalton Trumbull movie, actually. I can't really find any decent pictures. It looks like a war film, though, from what I can see from the description. So yeah, not necessarily a movie for kids, but Christmas Story itself is a movie for kids, made for kids of all ages. Even though it does take place in 1940 something, it is the story of Ralphie, who is a fictionalized version of the author Gene Shepard, and his story of growing up. I believe it takes place in Ohio, right? No, it takes place in
Holman, Illinois.
Illinois, even though they shot it in Ohio. That's what
they shot it in Ohio. Yeah,
I flip-flop them all the time. Yeah,
Holman. There's a lot of things that say it takes place in 1940, but there's also a lot of anachronisms with regards to like early 1930s and later after the war. What's interesting is that in the opening shot at Higbee's, you can see two veterans looking through the glass behind Ralphie as he's reading the Red Ryder stuff. So like there's clearly, they're kind of playing around with that time period. And even they have Wizard of Oz, which came out like 39, right? So
yeah. But if you go by the sequel, the newer film anyway,
yeah.
What did we figure the math was?
Well, there's a shot of the calendar in the first scene, and it says December 1973, and then Scut says it's been 33 years since the fight. So then you do the math. It's like, okay, 1940 is the year that the sequel is saying it took place in.
Okay. So with that, although wasn't there some U.S. soldiers who fought prior to the war actually kicking off for other countries? That could be a possibility.
I know there's people shipping out to like some of their military bases and whatnot, but the official war announcement I don't think had occurred because Pearl Harbor was attacked in November 1940, I think.
December.
And then 41 was their official
was.
Announcement that they were entering the war. So
okay, so we have kind of a rough idea, but in that respect, I think there's another reason why there's a bit of what I would call the the Goldberg's effect
Mhm.
on the movie is because the stories that are in it are actually taken from like 3 separate stories.
And 3 separate parts of his lifetime, yeah.
Yes, 3 separate parts of his lifetime. Well, the 2 of them are fairly close, but basically the tongue story and the BB gun story are similar times, or roughly the same time-ish.
And I think the
But
dogs took place when he was, like, a teenager?
yeah, but basically, like, yeah, the leg lamp story, he was a teenager already by the time that happened, I guess.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because it would have to be a little bit later, probably, for that.
Because it's a
But,
plastic lamp and it breaks so easily. I'm like, wow, that must have been some really weird plastic.
is it really? I thought they kind of meant it to be glass, but I think.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, they treat it like it's glass, but the mom actually says that stupid plastic lamp. I
That's
hate
true.
that thing. And I'm like, oh, he used the word plastic.
but I guess that's a true story. And he said, because I listened to the actual broadcast that he told the story on, and of course, some of these stories come from his book, but Bob Clark flat out admitted that he took the stories from other places too. Because famously, how he was introduced to Gene Shepard was he was rolling up for a date one night, and Gene come on the radio. I think he was on I can't remember where it was. Was it Washington or somewhere on the PBS station? And he's like, "Well, I got to hear this story now," because he started hearing the tongue story, sticking your tongue to a phone pole, or metal pole.
Metal pole in the winter, yeah.
And so the story had started before he pulled up to the house, but as he was pulling up, he's like, okay, I'm just going to go around the block a couple times till the story's done. He's like, 40 minutes later, in a very pissed off date, I knew what I wanted to do. And he's like, when Porky's was huge, then I could finally make this movie.
Well, it took him 10 years to make it, I think. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and MGM just didn't give a shit. They're like, well, whatever, go do what you want to do. And so because of that, that actually led to the reason why, as we said at the very start of this, it wasn't necessarily considered a Christmas movie until later on. And that was because MGM didn't pay much attention to it, so they didn't book it. Because back then you actually had to book the theaters a little bit differently than they do now. So it was only booked for the first few weeks of November, and they had another movie that come in after that was what their big Christmas movie. So this movie didn't even play in most theaters over Christmas. Bob Clark said it was less than 100 theaters over December it was playing.
Yeah, but then it ended up taking over more screens after the holidays because people kept on wanting to see it.
Well, and he said, yeah, re-releases the next year, and video in 86, when it finally hit video, he said that really made a big difference. Plus, I think it showed on HBO in 85 or 84, one of the two. And he's like, the between cable and then the video, and then, of course, when it started showing on TNT and TBS for the 24-hour marathon, he said at one point the ratings had hit 38 million people had watched it in one of the goes, which was like this, there's a crazy number to think about in today's numbers when we talk about, like, that's even more people than would watch Big Bang Theory on average. That's like twice their audience.
Yeah, because I think Big Bang Theory is around 12, 14 on average.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, it was it would have been bigger in theaters had it had a slightly wider release and a longer.
It made its money back, and that's why they said MGM just didn't really give a shit after that until the video was huge, and they're like, "Oh, well, we got a little bit of a hit here." And then from then on, it got re-released every year, of course.
Mm-hmm. And it's a really tight film. It does a good job of reconciling those different stories all into one sort of week, essentially, because that's how the movie takes place pretty much over the course of a week. And I love the aspect that Ralphie asks his mom, Santa, and his teacher that he wants this gun, and he never tells his dad. And his dad somehow finds out, and a lot of fans speculate that he found out because when Ralphie put the insert into the pseudo Life magazine, the dad somehow maybe found it and realized what the signal was and secretly bought the gun and hid it in one place.
I think
where the
part
mom
of that
too.
I think part of that too is also what plays into the sequel, which we'll talk about a little later, is that dad pays more attention to things than what it appears.
And what it appears like, yeah.
Yes. And I think that's a big part of his character. And I think that's why I think the second film resonates so much with that. But let's get back to how this story is structured, because basically what you get is Gene Shepard himself narrating over the film, like he's telling you the story. And as you go out, like you said, through these vignettes, it starts out with planting the idea he wants to be begun. And then we get into, I believe, the bully story is also a separate story too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So because I think then it intersperses the bully story in with the tongue story, and then you set up the dad's story, which pays off in the latter half. And I believe the centerpiece, if I'm remembering the structure of the film, is Santa Claus, and then it gets into the latter half of the film, if I remember right. And then it's also has these little vignettes.
Well, you also got the negotiating for the tree and the changing of the tire.
Okay, that's on the that's on the way home from Santa.
No, that's before Santa.
Is that before Santa?
Oh,
I thought that was on the way home from Santa.
It feels like it's supposed to be on the way home from Santa, but
okay, you're right. That might be before. Was that when they were getting the tree then? Okay, so that's a separate event.
They were getting the tree. And that's where you saw like the old man and his mom really kind of have fun with the tree salesman, because he's like, this is a great tree, and he's like, well, pines are falling over there, and they're like, well, maybe we should get one of those artificial trees, and then and they're having jokes with that at the salesman's expense, and then they end up getting the tree that they want for $2 off, and the guy throws in rope and ties it to his car for him, and he's like, deal. And you're like, that's cool, because he's having fun, and he's teaching the kids, and the wife's in on it as well. It's like a whole like family orchestrated grift to get a bargain.
There's actually something that plays on that in my summer story. So I think this is kind of a kind of a joke, an ongoing joke with Gene Shepard, where it's like, the scheme is on kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like him and his brother are in on the deal with the mom in knowing how to act when there's a tax assessor that comes by. And I guess at that time they taxed everything. So they would ship everything they could off that was expensive and new to the relatives, so that when this guy would come over and the kids would all be known and prepped what to say and what not to say. So it kind of very much reminded me of that scene. And you're going to have to forgive me because of those fucking 24-hour marathons. I've seen the movie so many times and I don't remember the exact order of everything, because I've seen it so many times and over and over and over and over again in like this just ongoing procession in the background that some of the events kind of fumble in my brain. But I mean, I do remember like the main beats, and I did just watch it like 3 weeks ago. So you'll have to forgive me if I forget which order certain events happen in.
Well, that's okay, because it plays into something we were talking about a little bit before the show, which is the fact that Melinda Dillon is the lead actor in this film. She's the mom, and she has a lot to do in this, and you kind of forget how much she has to do, because the story is really focused on Ralphie's adventure during this week. But when it comes to the scene, of the Christmas tree, and then taking it home, and then Ralphie saying the F word and that freaking out, like the way the dad responds to that, it's very calm.
That is very early in the movie, isn't it?
It's about like 45 minutes in.
Okay. Yeah.
And
that's after the bully or before the bully bit?
I think it's before the bully bit.
Yeah, because the bully bit is right before near the end. Yeah.
It's before the bully bit because he says the word, the dad, you can, the way he perform, the way Darren McGavin performs it, it's like he's knows that his kid listens to him. He's just got that smirk on his face, and he's like, okay, go back in the car, I'll clean up here. And then he sees because they have the gimmick of he wishes he was like in the Indy 500 in the pit crew changing tires real fast and whatnot. Yeah. So he gets inside, and the wife's like, yeah, it took 8 minutes. He's like, do you know what your son said? And she's like, what? And he's like, Randy, because Randy's trying to pick over, and he just leans in and says it. And she's like, what? And then you cut straight to the soap gag, and, Gene Shepard narrating all the soap and whatnot. And then she's like, well, where did you hear it? And he just says Schwartz. So the poor kid gets beaten on the phone when the mom, and the guilt on Melinda's face when she realizes that just in conveying this information to a fellow mother, and that mother just beating the crap out of her kid, she feels so bad that she puts soap in her own mouth and then gags. And you're like, this is an interesting character. I thought there's more going on with her than you think. And I loved it.
I thought she was doing that because she was just kind of like, oh, it can't be that bad. And then as soon as she did it, she's like, oh my God, it is that bad. That's what I thought that was my whole life.
I mean, that's the other part of the layer too. But when you just take a look at her face, when she's hearing the mom freak out, and
because she would never do that to Ralphie.
Is going like, what did I do? I'm sorry, Mom. And she's just like guilty and heartbroken. And so
See,
you have
I
like
always
all
took
these
that
layers.
part as more of Melinda's character knowing damn well that he heard it from his dad, but
Yeah.
she's still trying. She's just like in denial of that.
And
I always saw the two as separate, but you could be right.
But the thing is, that also works into she's punishing herself by putting soap in her mouth because she lied to her. She's
That could be too, but like, yeah, again,
there's
like
so many, you can have fun
yeah.
with it. There's so many layers going on because there's so much more happening in that scene than just what's on the surface. And you know, when you watch compared to like modern day movies that try to do something like this, that there's nothing else going on beneath it. It's just kind of right superficial, right on the nose type of stuff. And this one here, there's all these things where she's trying to be a disciplinary mom. She's trying to make, teach a lesson and not.
Well, she plays the different roles. Yeah.
Yeah. She's playing different roles. And I mean, even when she sends Ralphie back to her room and she's like, don't you give me that look, you're going to get it. Like, and she's really upset with that whole language thing. And then it comes back into play where when she pulls Ralphie off of Scut after he's beaten the crap out of him, she tells the dad that, yeah, he got into a fight, but it's like a boys will be boys thing. She plays it down as much as possible because, she just knows that it's not a problem worth exploring at this point. Like she already saw what happened when she told another parent what happened with the kid. She's like, I mean, you don't for a second think that Darren McGavin would be the type of guy that would beat the crap out of his kids.
No, I think part of that is that mom already knows. See, that's where I always took it is because here's the thing.
Already knew too, yeah.
Yeah, both sides of it. First she knew that Farkus was the kid who was fucking with him all this time. So she knew that. And she also knew that that's how Darren would probably react because just of the kind of guy he is. Like, that's the other thing. And that's what I mean by the roles. And that's why I think it's it is very important because when we get to the second film, this will come up again as far as like the role that she plays to the old man compared to what she plays to Ralphie, compared to what she plays to Randy, compared to, and so on down the road. And she is very ultra aware of everything, I feel like, more so than what we as an audience probably give her credit for and you brought this up before the show, and that's kind of why we're hitting this note so hard.
Even the breaking of the lamp, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's
she plotted that, and she does it so brilliantly.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, to this day, based on the fact that that's based on a true story, and Gene Shepard said because I listened to him telling that tale, and you can tell the sincerity in his voice when he's like, to this day, I still don't know if she really did it on purpose or not. And like his co-host there, he's like, you think she did? He's like, I think she did. She hated that thing, he said. And see, that's the thing is like the picture. That's the thing is because we'll talk a little bit more of the character of the mother. Melinda Dillon plays the mother more of what I picture his real mother was like, because compared to what she's like in the sequel. Because if you listen to a few of the stories, and it's really true, like she is kind of the leader of the family, even though the old man acts like he's the
well,
good
the other
old-fashioned
like
dad. But
I love that the first scene with Darren McGavin, he's in the paper, he's doing the puzzles, and he asks his wife the question about the Lone Ranger's nephew's horse name, and she answers it, and he's like, "Oh, how do you know that?" Like, well, everybody knows that, and he's just like, "Oh yeah." It's like he doesn't feel emasculated by it. He's just there's some sort of rapport going on there.
Yeah, and what's also funny is because then she goes, what is the for? And he's like, great characters in literature or whatever. And she's like, the Lone Ranger's horse?
Yeah.
Or not the,
like there's definitely, he's like, like it's funny because there's something going on there.
Or Tonto's horse or whatever it was. I can't remember.
No, it's Lone Ranger's nephew's horse.
Nephew's horse. I was gonna say it wasn't Silver because it was a different one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's like, everybody knows that. And he's like, how the fuck does everybody know that? And actually, I guess this was an ongoing thing in their life. Like he was doing this all the time when Ralphie was growing up.
Yeah.
Like there would be these constant contests in these crossword puzzles, he said. And that's how he started off the story about the leg. And he's like, finally, my dad won. And he came home and he's like, it's a major award. It's a major award. It'll be here today. I won. So basically it plays out a lot like it does in the movie, but yeah. he's like, yeah, he even had everybody out there in the yard looking at it from the window. He was so proud. So proud. He never won anything in his life.
Let's put it up against in the front window so everybody can see.
Yeah, I guess that's what he really did. He's like, I mean, of course, I'm sure Gene embellishes quite a bit in these stories, but I mean, we know that this is our dads, right? Like, especially of a certain era. Yeah. And I think that's why this movie resonates so much with people, is whether you grew up in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, even partially in the 70s, there's so much, even some of the 80s parts, even when I was growing up, there's certain aspects of this movie that I can relate to. And that's why I think it's resonated for so many years beyond its initial release, is because it is just one of those kind of slice of Americana pie stories. And it's done so well in the earnest way that, Gene Shepherd kind of delivers the readings of the story like it's a very serious, event, no matter how satirical it is. Especially like the greatest example, of course, being the dog, I dare you, I double dog dare you, I triple dog dare you story, and how he breaks it down.
He conveyed the level of importance through the eyes of a child. And he did so through words that anyone would understand. Like, he didn't just use child logic. He's like, this is how the kid thinks, and I'm going to explain it to you in the same way that you as an adult would understand it.
Well, not only that, he tells it with the sincerity and the urgentness, like if he's telling somebody who two guys were having, like, dueling it out with, like, Russian roulette or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's he that's what I love about the sincerity in his delivery. And it is a satirical nature to it, but it's how he delivers it, and it's how he's telling this story. It's like he would deliver it the same way as if he was telling you about this story about these two guys who are nose to nose doing Russian roulette to the death. You know what I mean? Like, that's how he tells that story. And I love, and that's kind of how the humor plays into it, right? Of course.
Yeah.
Because that's just a classic kind of way of, I don't know what kind of comedy you would call that. Maybe even Snow in the chat, he knows.
Well, it's an earnest type of comedy. It's treated seriously, but it's silly. And it's the fact that matters that when you're a kid and you're dealing with all those types of things, you take it as kind of like a level of gospel. It's like, these are the rules of the play yard. It's like, rules of the playground. This is how society works for us.
Yeah, like it's or like if he was describing like a trial, basically, or what have you, a very important trial. And that's what I love about the nature of how he delivers that. And that, of course, it's the same kind of humor you would do in, like, when they did on SNL, they would do like and now Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Only it doesn't even go to the extreme that those go. It stays on point the whole time, right? Like, it never veers off into that, weird nature of just, Gene going off into some tangent. No, it's always on point. It's always with Ralphie in the moment, in his head. And that was another thing, to talk about how Melinda Dillon got the starring role. Not only was she the bigger star at the time because of Close Encounters, she also has, I think, the most lines of anybody else on screen, because, believe it or not, Peter Billingsley doesn't have that many lines.
I think he has like less than 100.
Yeah, because most of his speaking is in his mind.
Yeah.
And so he could react to that. They had the director most of the time reading the lines, but sometimes they would have Gene Shepherd on the set actually reading it. But I guess Gene became a problem early on, so they had to kind of scooch him away from the set because he would get too invested in shit. And he's like, it's life. It's like, no, it was like this, and you got to do this. And Bob's like, I got to fucking shoot this movie, and I don't have 10 years to shoot it, Gene. So like,
we took 10 years to make it. I don't have 10 years to shoot it.
You either got to just read what's on the page and do it for me, or you can't be on the set. So like, then he finished the rest of it later on in post. But it was kind of like, but Gene was just very enthusiastic about the whole thing, and stuff like that. And you can tell through the readings and everything how he's doing this. This is a very special thing for both of these guys, right?
Yeah.
To be able to tell this story. And in the casting part of it, let's get into that a little bit. Peter Billingsley, of course, seems inspired because at that time he was an up-and-coming child actor.
He was like 12 at this point, right? Playing a 9-year-old?
I think he was 9 or 10, yeah, when he did this. But he, of course, was the bigger star of the kids on the set, and he was the leader of the kids because there was a troop of kids, believe it or not. And Bob Clark actually said that he was kind of worried about it, considering, they always say don't work with animals or kids, but he said the kids were actually pretty much a dream, and he gave a lot of credit for Peter for that. He said because Peter had worked, for quite a few years before, because I think he started when he was 4 or 5.
Yeah,
And so
he
all
was
the
born
other
in
kids
70. He was born in 71, so he would have been around 11 and 12 when he shot
somewhere around there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, so all the other kids looked up to him and followed his lead. So he said he's like, I've worked with more adults where I've had to turn around and tell them, to settle down than these kids. He goes, the kids were really great. And not only that, I guess all the kids liked the teacher quite a bit too. So they love doing those scenes.
Oh, Teddy Moore. Yeah.
And I guess, what's funny is she's the only other actress, the teacher, to return in My Summer Story besides Jean Shepherd. So to play the character more than once.
Oh, okay.
She's actually in the sequel too. Yeah. Because she didn't really age all that much in 10 years. She got a little bit chubbier, but not much. She's actually the wife of some director, I guess. I don't remember who they said, but actually, as far as Darren McGavin goes, he was not their first choice.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson was actually very interested in the part, but MGM said, we're not paying Jack Nicholson money. So yeah, actually, because Bob had actually wanted to send him another script, and I guess his agents had gotten a hold of both scripts, not knowing which one it was. And Jack was interested in doing A Christmas Story, believe it or not. So we almost got Jack Nicholson playing the dad.
Yeah, but I remember hearing, I think when I first heard the director's commentary, Bob Clark said Jack Nicholson was great, but Darren McGavin played it exactly as it needed to be, like was the better choice in the end. And I have to agree, Darren was fantastic in this.
Well, he does he does it perfectly because he can go from all the ranges in the one scene you need the old man to be, right? Because he's everybody's dad.
He plays the shtick really well. Like when he comes out of the furnace room and there's just nothing but black smoke surrounding him, and he's completely like accustomed to it, and you're thinking that is such a hazard in the house. And it's like you don't realize how dangerous it is to have something burning in your basement.
Well, I'm trying to remember because I think that might even be another part of a story now too that I'm trying to think of. Because do they say in the movie how they got the furnace, or is that from another one of the stories I remember?
Darren McGavin, his career is in furnaces, I think.
Because I remember from one of the because I swear from one of the stories that it must be in a story. Gene said that they got this furnace because it was from one of those door-to-door fucking salesmen, and because Darren McGavin, the old man, because he doesn't have a name. They never tell you what the dad's name is. No, I don't think they ever tell you what the mom's name is either.
No, they don't. I think in the other works they say his name was Frank.
Yeah, but they always referred to him as the old man.
Any of the films, as far as I know.
And even in all the stories that Gene told, he always called him the old man, and he's always credited as the old man in because there's been actually several. We'll talk about that when we get to the sequel. There's actually been several other productions based on Gene's works, and he's always referred to and credited as the old man. But anyhow, where was I going with that? I forgot.
The furnace salesman.
Oh yeah, the furnace. I guess some furnace salesman came by and sold him this furnace. So he was so hung up on the fact that he sold this much, or he spent so much money on this furnace that he was going to keep it working for the full however many years it was that the furnace guy promised him it would work, like 10 years or 15 years. I can't remember which. I'll have to find the story. So that's another story I think that's crammed in there. So like all these stories are crammed in this movie. It's almost like a greatest hits, I guess.
Yeah.
And the way Bob Clark was able to weave it all together was Christmas, basically. So, because like even the leg lamp story, I think actually happened in like the summertime or something like that. But, or no, maybe that was a Christmas story because that's actually in the other Christmas Story movie they did, the TV movie called the Open Hearth one. What did I say it was called? Shit. But that's when Ralphie's a teenager. I think that's a Christmas one. I have to go back and watch it again. It's been a while since I've seen it. But anyhow, yeah, so moving on from there, as far as like Melinda Dillon, though, she, I guess, was their first choice. And that was, of course, because of Close Encounters. Bob said he saw Close Encounters and knew she could handle all the different ranges that the mom had to handle. And Peter, though, was the first choice, but then they're like, well, he's kind of obvious, so let's see what else is out there. And then Bob said after 1,000 kids, they finally just went back to Peter because they just couldn't find anybody else that just quite fit what they were looking for. So that's kind of how he got picked for the role. So as far as the rest of the kids, I'm sure they were just cast apart. It sounded like to me. I don't have any other stories as far as the rest of them, but that's all I know on that part. But I don't know if you know anything else or want to say anything else about the
Other
cast.
than
But I
I
think it
guess
was
Sean
inspired.
Astin was considered for a few weeks and then wasn't picked.
I'm not surprised. He would have been the right age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he said they did look for other people for a while, but they just got to a point where they're just like, why don't we just try to get Peter? He just, they thought he was too on the nose, I guess is what Bob said. It's like, well, maybe that's a good thing. So.
Yeah. But I mean, he played it well, because you also have the other subplot of the Little Orphan Annie Dakota ring.
Oh, that's right.
You've got the one point where when Ralphie realizes the next person he can ask that might give him the BB gun is Santa, they go to the Christmas parade and they were trying to get in there before.
Oh yeah, he's in a rush. Yeah,
Hillbillies or I keep on forgetting
Higbee's
the name.
closes.
Higbee's closes, and then the Santa's literally just like getting kids on his lap and then throwing them off before within a second, and he plays that whole frozen like mind going blank. Peter Billingsley plays the mind going blank when he sees Santa perfectly. To the point when like Santa's like, you want a football? He's like, yeah. and the way it complements the narration. It's like, wake up, you idiot. And then he turns around and he's like, no, I want this. And then Santa's like, oh, you'll shoot your eye out, kid, and then just boots him off down the slide. And the parents just see them like lying in the fake snow, and just like the dad just yanks his kid up and he's like, oh, that's it for today, I guess, boys. We're going home. It's just like the casual nature of it all. And what I really liked about the sequel is the fact that, while the kids are waiting in line for Santa, the parents are out shopping for last minute gifts for the next day. I mean, I think it's something that as a kid watching it, you'd never really pick up on, but as an adult, you're like, oh, that's exactly what they're doing. Getting those final little things.
Yeah. And as far as what was some other things I wanted to touch on here for the main movie? Shit. So we got
so you have the Christmas Day, and Ralphie gets his gun, and
I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about the go ahead.
The bunny. You're talking about the bunny costume?
Well, actually, I wanted to talk about the sequence, the dream sequences, the vignettes.
Like I love the fact that they're really overplayed and they're performed so goofy like and overly dramatic. Right. It's absolutely brilliant. It reminds me of some Asian cinema actually, because they go all out.
What they were, and there's actually like I think 2 of them that were cut because of course
when they did one. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to get to the Flash Gordon one. That actually was filmed, but that is not yet to surface. I've seen script pages for it, but Peter Billingsley has talked about filming it and stuff and how cool it was.
Colin Fox also talked about it too.
Yeah, but because of course, they didn't have the budget, and then of course Bob also knew when it was coming to time. He's like, yeah, it's gone, and the rest of them got cut because there's no way they're going to be able to afford them, because those were the most expensive parts of the budget. Because MGM kept wanting him to do it modern. And because he's like, no, it needs to take place in 1940 something, and they're like, well, it'd be cheaper if you just do it modern. So he did everything he could to try and make it, and that's probably why there's some anachronisms here and there. Plus, besides the stories, was they did everything they could on the cheap to still try and make it feel like it was the 1940s as much as they could, because the studio just, as far as like they cared, like why does it matter, kind of thing. But, and you know how that goes, script doctor. You've seen that, how many Godfathers, when I just got the offer today, so that reminds me of that. Why don't you set it now?
Like, no, the time period is also a character. Like that's
exactly, yeah.
The time period was a character in this movie. I mean, and it was so much of its. I mean, it I don't think it would have worked as well or as effectively if they were trying to do the same story in like the 1980s. It's like airsoft BB guns. They were kind of popular in the 80s, but you're talking about the dawn of Pong and the Ataris and all
exactly.
That. It's like it's not gonna hold up the same level.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, we had BB guns and shit at that time, but you're right. You're 100% right. You had Atari and stuff like that becoming
like I remember as a kid, I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old, and some of my friends, they had the airsoft guns and the super soakers, and they're like, okay, let's go out and play. And then
it'd basically be the kids from
but we'd rather play Nintendo. And then oddly enough, like I remember the one time where I really wanted to go out and play with like, you know, the squirt guns and stuff. And then I lost the bet. We all had played Nintendo, and then it just hit like a huge thunderstorm. It's like, well, I guess we couldn't play outside anyway. So, but,
yeah,
like,
it'd basically
that's the thing.
it'd be like the kids in ET for the most part, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
But no, like as far as that goes, like, so the vignettes were kind of neat. Like you said, they're all based on, and what I was getting to is they're all based on, you know, the serials and stuff that he would listen to on the radio, and the funny pages he would read, and you know, in the serials he'd go see in the theater, if I could fucking talk. And that of course is where the Flash Gordon sequence came in, and of course Peters explained how it was, you know, the most elaborate bit that they had. He's surprised they cut it, but like he had the suit and everything, and they had a whole set and everything. And some of this movie was shot in Canada. That's what I was going to get to, Script.
Oh, a bunch of it was shot in Toronto, and
Yep.
and also in other areas around the area. Like the interior of the house was shot in Canada. Some of the exteriors were shot in Toronto because Toronto still had the old timey streetcars at the time. The ones that are still from the 1940s, and they used those.
Yeah, I think the Higbee's bits, I think all that stuff was shot somewhere down in Toronto or something.
And then
like
other parts were shot in the U.S.
Yeah, stuff outside the house, like because Peter was talking about in the one bit where, you know, any of the time where you see him shooting like the bandits, that's the backyard in Ohio.
Yeah.
But then when you got the reverse on him, that's him in Canada.
Yeah. Oh, when he's shooting from the window, that's him. And
yeah, and he even talks about like how, you know, you got the one scene where all the kids run up to the house. He's like, yeah, then 3 months later, that's me in Canada.
Yeah, going inside. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it's surprising how long it took them to film this movie. It sounds like they spent quite a lot of time on it, considering. But there's not a lot of special effects and all that business. But I think it's probably more so like for the traveling and whatnot.
The travel between Cleveland and Toronto is a lot shorter than you'd think. It's like 6 hours if it's a drive. If you're flying, it's maybe like less.
Well, it sounds like they shot everything in the U.S. first, and then they moved up to Canada. Is what I was thinking.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have longer winters up there to pull off to pull off the season. That's for sure.
That's at least what it sounded like from the way they had described it. Plus, the other thing is with kids, you can only. That's the thing that I think Bob has talked about that made it to Nightmare. It wasn't the kids themselves; it was the hours, because they could only shoot so many hours. So that's probably another reason why the production took so long too, I bet.
Well, they did a bunch of tricks. Like, for instance, the school. The exterior of the school was shot in Canada.
Yep, and that's the exterior, interior are the same place as far as the school. That I know.
Yeah, well, even the pipe and all that stuff that was outside, because the school's in the background of the shot. And they rigged it up with just a little vacuum hose to simulate the tongue sticking to the pole, which is a really well done effect too. It's convincing.
Considering they went that far at that time and they just didn't tell the kid to stick his tongue to a fucking frozen bowl and then just take it, you know, like, and actually had him do it. That says a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
it's still the early 80s. They didn't give a shit then.
They did have issues with insurance back.
I'm sure, but I'm just saying,
but like, not only that, it's like you have to deal with the parents. Like, you're gonna have my kid stick his tongue on a frozen pole? The hell not, because you have to.
Well, it just reminds me of Clint Howard and some of his stories, right? Like he would talk about when he was a kid. That's only like 10 years or so before that, and he's just like, they didn't give a shit. They let that damn bear drag me all over the fucking set. He's like, the only time they cared is when they brought the cats out because I was a snack to them. But yeah, so like, again, though, yeah, I was just being more facetious than anything. But that's kind of the whole point of this movie, right? It's a time that gone by. It's a time that we don't have anymore. Kids don't grow up in this world anymore. And there's a quaintness to it. There's a sweetness to it. It doesn't pretend to be anything else more than it is. The resolution is brilliant. So let's get to that, because you were talking about that anyway just before.
What you have as the resolution with regards to this family is that this movie highlights how much this family actually loves each other. Like, that's, and how much they pay attention, and the fun that they have with each other. Like the fun that the parents have with the kids and their excitement around the holidays. Like, that's what this is about. Like, the dad loves Christmas. He loves turkey. He loves all those types of things. He definitely loves his wife because, you know, you have that nice little moment where he's sitting in his chair and his wife's sitting on his lap kind of, and it's from the back looking out. It's like, wow, we did a great Christmas. And he's just subtly flirting by like rubbing his hand up and down the middle of her back. And like, oh yeah, there's all these things here. And it's not like this type of what you would get from people who don't actually know their history. Like, you know, oh, the old man, he's toxic masculinity. He's not in touch with his emotions. He doesn't laugh. He makes threats. He probably beats like all that stuff. That's not in this at all. It's a very honest approach. Like, this is a guy who, even the tough things that he says, he does in jest. Like when he's talking about, like, Randy won't eat. He's like, I know what I'll do. I'll get my tools and I'll force feed him. And you can tell that, like, he says it with a slight intimidation, but there's a twinkle in McGavin's eye that you can tell, like, he's saying this as a joke just to try and get the kid to eat.
Well, there's like, he's full of bluster, right? He's one of the, he's all bark and no bite. And it's the same thing. You can see it in the relationship between him and the wife, and of course in him and the kids, and how the dichotomy works. And I love that there is this, like, you know, she thinks, you know, certain things about him, he thinks certain things about her, but at the end of the day, I think that's what that's so sweet about the scene you were just talking about, is that they are such a unit in a family, and they do know each other so well. And even though there's this chaos throughout the entire film that we're shown, and it is a very realistic look at family life, you know, and it's not that, you know, and I'm not saying it's like an abusive look at life, you know, or anything like that. Or,
that's the other part too.
It's just a standard, like, chaotic, the way life works. It doesn't work like it does on TV, right? So
it doesn't work like it does on TV, but you can also tell, like, there's definitely there's a play of status and control in the family between the mom and the dad, but it's not like who's better or who's the leader. It's like, it's basically, it's about who knows what. Like, that's the brilliance of it. It's not any type of abusive relationship. It's really a battle of wits of, like, I know these kids better than you, but then sometimes you know them better than me. And it's like, how are we going to manage these two nightmares we have?
Well, and he's not abusive towards her at all either. And that's the thing that I think is important.
No, he's not.
Even though he does, like, the swearing and the blustering and all that kind of stuff, at no point do we ever feel like
he would ever do anything to him.
Yeah, there's a problem with them.
Like when she breaks the leg, or, you know, comes up with the excuse that she broke the lamp.
Yeah.
He's just like, he doesn't actually lash out at her. He's just like, it's my thing, it's my trophy. It was beautiful. It's a piece of
That's the closest to a standoff they have. Yeah.
And then she just lets him out, like, I hated that thing. And he's like, well, get the glue, we're out. You used all the glue. He's so angry at her.
Did it on purpose.
Like, no one finger. Like, he had nothing.
He doesn't necessarily, like, he doesn't flat out keep blaming her for the thing. He's like, he jumps to the next thing, which is, you used all the glue
on purpose.
And what I love about it is that dichotomy is carried so well into My Summer Story, and that's probably because Bob Clark is the director of both. Mm-hmm. Because the Charles Grodin, Mary Steenburgen version of them are very, very, very similar. Like, they have the same kind of relationship, same kind of dichotomy. She puts up with so much of his shit to a point, and she handles it so perfectly. Like, it's all done very well, and because it's done the same way. Like I said, they don't have, like, a combative relationship. He is a certain way, she's a certain way, but they work so well together on that level that it's just. And I don't mean just like working together as a couple, but I mean as a comedy unit as well.
A comedy unit, as a marriage. But here's the other part too, that the old man that Darren does well is, like, he displays a lot of affection to his kids and to his wife. Like, when they're at the parade, he's got Randy on his shoulders. Like, a bad dad wouldn't do that. And a bad dad pretending to be a good dad wouldn't do that. Like, this is a kid who's like, yep, you're on my shoulders. I'm having fun. You're watching Santa on the parade. And, you know, like, Ralphie's saying, like, we got to get to see Santa. We got to get to see Santa. And the mom's like, you know, Ralphie, patience. And he's there on his mom's side. It's like, Ralphie, shut up. It's like they're a partnership and it's great because they have their roles in the house and the family, but it's like when the fuse goes out, Dad's like, nobody move. And then he fixes it and comes back on. The tree
nobody can fix a fuse faster than my old man.
Faster than a jackrabbit on a date, you know. It's awesome. And then you have this very fun moment where, like, here's the thing that made me laugh a lot. So the old man's opening his presents, and he finishes opening them all up, and he's like, "I didn't get a tie."
I didn't get a tie this year.
Yeah, it's like that's. It shows like that's what he was expecting. That's what he likes. But then he also points out to Ralphie like, "Oh, there's a one present behind the desk there." He opens up, it's the gun, and he's the dad is so excited. He's as excited as Ralphie is, because he's like, be careful with the beads, put it in there, and he's like miming it with him, and you can tell that there's like this connection there where he still remembers what it's like to be a kid. And then he turns to his wife, like, I had one when I was 8 years old, and
right.
like there's just something there. It's like those are the sweet, endearing moments. Like that's what you fall in love with when you're like, yeah, I had parents that were like that they got as excited for the gifts and for the experience and seeing this part of the world through their kids' eyes, that it just brought back a lot of fun emotions of their youth. And it's like, that's what you share. And that's one of the things that would made the holidays great, especially for this type of movie, is you're able to share and relive some of these events and then pass them on to your kids and your family, because that's what it's not really the gifts. It's the emotions that come from the thought and the understanding, and the fact that here's this dad that barely talks to Ralphie about the actual Christmas holiday. They always talk about other stuff so far, like things of the day and whatnot. But it's like just because he appears like he's distant, he's a lot closer to things than the kids realize. And like he's reading his paper at the kitchen table, and Randy's underneath the kitchen sink, and the mom just opens the door, pulls him out, and the dad just looks up for a second, sees it, gives it a look like, I don't know what the heck's going on, but I don't want to know. And then just goes back to his paper. It's like, that is very much like a dad thing where it's like, okay, boys are weird.
Sorry.
Especially
and that scene right there we were talking about before the show, I think that scene is one of the best encapsulations of this entire family, because you got Randy under the sink going, Dad's gonna kill Ralphie when he gets home, and Mom's like, no, he's not. It's like, and it's just like, they know, he's there. And like you said, the dad just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I love it, because a lot of that does carry over into My Summer Story. And I don't know if I don't think you got a chance to watch it before.
No, not the Summer Story, but I mean, that whole Christmas Day, those things. And then you have the turkey, right? Like the mom, like there's the other part of the relationship. The mom is making the turkey. It's got like an hour to go in the oven before it's ready. And the dad keeps on trying to sneak take a piece. And the mom is yelling, get away from the turkey. And he is like terrified of her reaction. It's like, that's showing a love and respect, because he knows.
And they know each other too.
They know each other. And even when Ralphie's getting the Bactine, and, the old glasses upstairs, because he stepped on them and whatnot. And the dad's, he got that really brilliant shot, like with the turkey's dead center frame. The dad's just slowly creeping up, and he's like, how's it going up there? It's like, we'll be down in a minute. And don't you think about going near that turkey? And he just like scurries off. It's brilliant. But then you have, the running gag of the neighborhood dogs that just love the dad. They just can't get enough of him. They keep bothering him and whatnot, and it frustrates the dad all to hell. And they break through the screen door, they eat the turkey, and the dad's incredibly calm. Like you can tell he's upset, and he probably would like to scream and, continue to curse out those dogs. But he's like, okay, get dressed. We are going out to eat.
Well, it actually goes a little further, and that's why I wish they had gotten more into the Bumpuses, because I mean, we get a little bit more of them in the Christmas Story, but we really do in My Summer Story. We get it. Like a big part of what goes on between the old man is him battling it out with the Bumpuses. And the dogs are just a small part of the problem. But there's no way they had time to get into all that shit in this movie too. So the dogs were the only part of the Bumpuses that made it in. But so basically, yeah, they're the hillbilly neighbors. But yeah.
The hillbilly neighbors, the crazy uncontrolled dogs. But then they end up having to go to the restaurant, the Chinese restaurant, which is, it used to be a bowling alley, and then they turned out so it's bowling. And it's
I never noticed that. Now these
Oh yeah, no, it says bowling on in the
I
neon
never
sign.
paid that much attention to it, I guess.
But the other part too, what I think is funny is like everybody laughs at the staff trying to sing the carols, the Christmas carols, but
It's
it's the
not fa ra ra
manager
ra
who's
ra.
who's criticizing them for singing it poorly, and the manager is also Chinese. He's like, no, it's not fa ra ra ra, it's fa la la la, and he's trying, and the guy like, and the family's fine with it, they're just enjoying themselves, but the manager is so frustrated. He's like, just go back in the kitchen and bring the food out.
Yeah.
And one of the behind the scenes parts is that I think Darren and Bob Clark refused to thought it would be a good idea not to tell Melinda what was going to happen with the duck coming out. So they gave her different pages
Oh,
for
really?
that
I didn't know
day.
that.
And so when the duck comes out with its head on, that's Melinda truly, honestly reacting to.
You can tell they're like losing it. Like that should be an outtake, but
exact. Yeah. And then Darren's like, it's smiling at me, and then the manager just chops the head right off, and that's an honest reaction of Melinda freaking out. And it's such a brilliant, funny, straightforward thing. Or it's just this manager trying to make the customer that's there on Christmas Day happy.
Well, what's funny about the whole ending bit taking place at the restaurant, I guess several members of the cast and crew have run into this or been told by other people that there are lots of families who every year will go to a Chinese restaurant and they will act out the entire fucking movie, like line for line, and then eat Chinese. And like, it's just this tradition that they do. And it's this thing that's gone on for years with families, and it keeps growing and growing. So it's like really weird tradition, but I guess maybe the internet found out about it, so other people adopted it. But it's just nuts how that caught on.
Yeah, but I mean, it's. I like the fact that, I mean, it sets up something great for the sequel, the Christmas Story, Christmas, because it shows like even though things are difficult, the dad maintains his cool, and even when things get weird, he kind of rolls with it because he's really polite to the manager, and he's like, listen, like, you're doing great, we're happy, but the duck is smiling at me. Do we need the head?
Yeah.
And it shows the fact that he's kind of like, he's affable, even though he has like a hard exterior from time to time. He's really this really like, there's something to him that got him this family and this life, and this.
He's very Clark W. Griswold in a sense that he just wants what's best for everybody. He wants everybody to be happy. He wants everything to go smoothly.
Yeah,
right? Like that's kind of his thing. I mean, it's not exactly like that, but it's very similar in that respect.
He's a far more controlled version of that. Like he's an honest and earnest take on that. Where Clark Griswold is just he's a failure all around, just trying to hold things together.
Exactly. But no, like, and again, we're going to talk about Christmas Story Christmas here real quick here before we go too much longer in the tooth. We did get a super chat earlier. Thank you so much, Stephanie. She pointed out that it was December 7th, so I was off by a day.
Right. No, she's 1941, right.
The stories about Indiana. Okay.
Yeah. So then it'd be right. So that even makes more sense when you see some of the veterans in having Christmas before they're going shipped out in over at the Higbee's scene. You got a male and female soldier, or if they're not soldiers, they're maybe Salvation Army, but it's hard to tell because it's a darkly lit scene. For those characters, all the lighting and focuses on Ralphie, but I did notice them there. I'm like, yeah, that would make sense. People are getting ready to, make their announcement. Yeah, there it is, Bo Ling.
Yeah, thank you, my buddy who's just sent me this. So we had it to show. Thank you. But yeah, so you didn't get to see my summer story, so I won't dwell on that too much. But I do recommend it. It is a very well done sequel. It doesn't have the same cast, of course, like I said, outside of the teacher and Gene Shepard. But Gene Shepard breaks right into it, just like it's a straight up sequel. It starts showing the house during Christmas time, and he says, he mentions the stories that happened in the first movie, and then he goes, but of course everything goes back to normal like it always does. And by next summer, he was on to the next thing. And of course, this movie, it's it's him dealing with the bullies, and he has like there's a little top story, like they're playing, tops, spinning tops, and the dad gets involved in that story. And there's also a bit about fishing, and then of course the dad also has a bit with the Bumpuses, and then mom also gets her own vignette in here too, which is another one of Gene's stories about the gravy boats. And I don't want to spoil any of this shit for anybody. So it's actually a very, very funny film. It's a little harder to find. Olive Films did put it out on Blu-ray. It's not really available on digital, but I guess Stars has shown it from time to time. So maybe, just maybe, you could find it on Amazon through the Stars app if it's on there that month. But yeah, I do recommend it. It's called My Summer Story, or It Runs in the Family was the theatrical title, but it's usually known under My Summer Story.
Mhm.
And as I pointed out before, Charles Grodin plays the old man, Mary Steenburgen plays the mom. They do great job as far as replacements go. And the kids are two of the Culkin kids. I can't remember which ones are the name.
Kieran Culkin is one of them. I know that.
Yeah, and then the other younger one that I don't think did too many movies, but they do just fine as Randy and Ralphie for the most part. Like the older one is Ralphie was kind of meh. The younger one playing Randy was just almost perfect though. I mean, he even has the same whiny voice and everything, so that part works just fine. But on that note, so that story takes place the direct summer right after the first film. So then this movie though, the newer one, the Christmas Story Christmas, doesn't really negate anything that happened in that movie, nor does that bother it. So to me, there is kind of a trilogy here, and I'm fine with that. But so let's get into the Christmas Story Christmas. And at first, I was kind of worried about this one. I wasn't sure because it was coming to HBOMax, and I didn't really see a reason to do a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those movies that's, yeah, the My Summer Story is one thing, but to do another Christmas story, I'm like, this could be Cousin Eddie's Christmas Story 2 all over again if we're not careful. But Script Doctor here, you finally got to watch it, and I watched it a couple weeks ago when it first dropped, and I surprisingly enjoyed it. I had a few issues with it, but we're going to get into some of those things here because you watched it twice now.
Yeah, I did. And I have to say, it's a very worthy sequel to A Christmas Story. We were talking about backstage because Melinda didn't come back to reprise the role of Mrs. Parker.
Yeah, sadly, she's retired. Yeah.
She retired in 2007. And I think what ended up happening is they got Julie Haggerty from Airplane and Airplane 2. And I think they had to rewrite the mom character to better fit what she could do as an actor. And that's probably why it feels a little off compared to the original Christmas Story, because Julie Haggerty doesn't play the same mom exactly. She plays more Julie Haggerty than the mom.
Yeah, she's a bit more of a ditzy mom as opposed to Melinda, as we've just talked about for the last almost hour about how, you know,
she knows more what's going on in that house,
different roles family she plays and all that business. Yeah.
Yeah. However, like the rest of the cast is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Peter Billingsley really knocks it out of the park. He gets even when he does the voiceover, he's matching the cadence and the inflections and urgencies that Gene is doing.
It does help that he kind of sounds like Gene, which is
he gets really close to
uncanny.
Yeah.
And that's pretty close to his actual voice. I mean, you got lucky with that, I guess.
Yeah, they did get lucky with that. You also have Erin Hayes, who is, if you know, is one of the wives in Bill and Ted's Face the Music.
Yep.
And then you have the two kids, which they're really, really good. But you have Mark, who's the 10-year-old, and you got Julie, who's like 6 or 7. And they're really smart kids, which I liked. I liked a lot. I like the fact that they didn't try to make the kids pseudo clones of Ralphie and Randy from they're their own characters in this point. Little Julie's a smart whippersnapper type of thing, cute as a button, a lot of fun. Mark is he's got the same type of energy that Ralphie has when he wants that sled, but he's also clever and defeats a bully in a more ingenious way than what Ralphie did back in the day.
And the thing with the sled that was cool is they didn't make it as much of an obsession like it was with, at least from our perspective, because we're seeing this from Ralphie's perspective. We got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's what I really enjoyed about this take, is that he's telling this story from the perspective as an adult that's already gone through Christmas for 41 years and playing around with it. And then he's also recalling what it was like being a kid at Christmas at the same time. But this movie really is essentially a tribute to the old man.
Yes.
It's a love letter to him and also a little bit of a love letter to the actor that played him, because they They have a couple of quick clips and a lot of audio that they've taken from that first film and peppered throughout this one here. And
we should probably give a quick synopsis before we get too much further.
Yeah, it's basically Ralphie and his wife have saved for a while, and they decided that the year 1973, Ralphie is going to dedicate to trying to become a published author and have a career doing what he loves. And it's coming up on Christmas, and they're expecting Ralphie's expecting his mom and dad to come visit them in Chicago. And he gets he's been sending stuff out to publishers, I think 16 in total, and all but 2 have rejected him so far. And he goes in person to one of the publications and
I think it's like a week or 2 before Christmas when it starts out, but yeah,
something like that. It's really close to Christmas, but he has only a few weeks before the end of the year, and he has to go back to work, and he's ready and willing to do that, but he doesn't want to deep down.
I think it's on the obituary or something, like it says December 16th is when his dad died, so I'm assuming that'd be the day.
Yeah.
So,
and but you have this homage to Ralphie trying to win over affection from his teacher when he has the theme of like, I want this for Christmas. And he's doing that with a science fiction novel called Neptune's something.
And some wacky sci-fi thing.
And it's this 2,000-page epic. And all the publishers are telling him it's too long.
I'm sure it's probably be poking fun at like Star Wars or something like that is what it's trying to do.
It's doing a little, it's poking. Well, here's the other part too.
His love
Ralphie Ralphie is actually kind of in tune, knowing that the next big genre to explode in the 70s and 80s is science fiction, but he's a little bit too early, and the rest of the world is not ready for it. And he's technically he's doing all the amateur mistakes. He's overwriting. He's setting so much stuff up in the first novel that he wants to pay off with the sequel instead of just getting out the best story.
And that's where I kept getting like the George Lucas vibes from.
Yeah. But he's like, and I like the fact that he uses like a Christmas tree bottle of alcohol to give as a bribe, and he's going back and forth with the publisher. Then he goes into his fantasy where he's competing against, Isaac Asimov and Frank Herbert, and he wins the Pulitzer, the 74 Pulitzer, and the publisher's begging for forgiveness. And he's doing the fantasy stuff. And the fantasy stuff is really well played, just like in the Christmas Story. But when he gets home after getting rejected from that publisher, he gets a call from his mom, and his dad has passed away, and it hits him pretty. Like, he's calm and he's trying to, be the man of the house, so to speak. But it's one thing that it's like the inevitable dread of that a child will face is the loss of a parent. And so they drive out to home in Indiana, and they're going to do Christmas at his mom's, and he's ready to take care of all the funeral arrangements and worry about that. But the mom's like, no, that stuff can wait now. Dad wouldn't like you guys moping around during Christmas because he loved the holidays so much. Let's just try and make the best Christmas we can. Ralphie, can you promise me that? And Ralph's like, yeah, sure. And it's all the struggles, like, how is he going to live up to his father? How is
and she adds more to his plate too.
Yeah, she adds a lot more to his plate. But
by wanting him to write the obituary of all things.
Yeah, well, that comes a little bit later, but right now he's just basically like, how do I make this a memorable Christmas that would make my dad proud? Like, that's kind of like his thing. Like, how can he do what his dad did for him for all those years and everybody that knew him? He's trying to live up to the legend, and it's a great conflict to have, and it's coming from a parent's perspective, and it's got a lot of little stories and vignettes going on. Snowball fights, talking with the buddies at the bar, trying to come up with new ideas. And it's really, really fun. But this is kind of where, like, everything else that's going on in town, I really, really like. It's just Julie Haggerty that feels off, because she plays the role like she has a little bit of a subtle rivalry with Sandy, Aaron Hayes' character. Like when they're doing puzzles or when they're playing Scrabble, there's some sort of, it feels like there's a chip on Julie Haggerty's shoulder. They introduced this new idea of carolers, which kind of fell flat to me. It's like you'll never get rid of carolers if they find out you're at home, and it didn't ring well. But all the other stuff around this, like the going shopping, having the kids stay in Santa and seeing like the children in line and the kid in front of them with a giant lollipop offering if they want to have a lick. And they're just like, no. And as they get further through the line, the lollipop gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the kid just throws up. And then they're just like, nope, get him up, get the kid out. He come back next week. and then you have the little girl who she asks Santa for a stuffed kitty cat and a new radiator for a 66 Plymouth for her dad.
Yeah, which is hilarious, which is kind of a twist, because Ralphie, when he was younger, was just so soaked up into his world.
Yeah. He was just wanted that gun. And it's funny because, the dad says, what I want is for a great Christmas or what I want is to be published author. What I need is a new radiator for the car. and the daughter remembers that. And then you got the Bupkis neighbors. The youngest one kid comes out.
Kind of befriends them. Yeah.
Kind of befriends them, eats a block of cheese as a meal.
I think that was a joke on the whole government cheese thing at that time. If I remember, that's about that era.
Probably, yeah. And it's just
because they did do a pretty good job of subtly making it feel like the 70s, even though it's supposed to take place in 73. I didn't really feel like there was anything that felt was like an anachronism or anything like that, but
I couldn't pick up anything.
I'd have to look. I'd have to really go through it
as it was didn't fit in that time period. Like even the hospital waiting room chairs. I remember the old hospitals that had those types of it was just a rail and then a plastic seat every 2 feet. Like they weren't close enough together for families. All those old stuff, but they do telegraph a lot of things in this story.
Yeah.
For instance, like the Plymouth, the trunk always unlatches and opens up randomly on their car. So something bad's going to happen.
But that's okay to a point because this is also still supposed to be a family film. This one's rated PG, just like the first one.
Mm-hmm.
You still need to be able to kind of, and I'm not saying you need to dumb it down, but kids need to be able to understand it just as well as adults. So sometimes some things need to be just a little bit more obvious than other times. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's not too on the nose or over the head at all. But it all seems to pay off very, very well.
It pays off really. Even the kids that they bring back, they all have a moment in this movie.
Yes,
that
they don't
really,
seem
really
forced,
plays, and it's great. It's absolutely great.
The closest to a forced scene, and you and I talked about this last week a little bit. So, forgive me for repeating it to you, Script, but I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about this on any streams. The Santa Claus scene was a scene I was worried about feeling like, oh shit, here we go with that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because every one of these movies you have that scene where it's too on the nose.
The Santa is like, it's just a mall Santa. He doesn't care. He's just
it plays out just perfectly fine and well. And the one scene I'm talking about, to me, that was the only time I kind of winced a little bit, but I still enjoyed it, was the whole Flick and Schwartz business, because you knew they had to set them up for some kind of I dare you, I double dog dare you. That was the moment where the movie kind of fell into the, okay, you're forcing this now just so you can have this thing.
I agree with that.
Other than that, that's the only real complaint I have as far as that goes, because the Red Ryder thing, it's in the background and mentioned, I think, one or two other times. Otherwise, it's not like this huge thing. They don't make the son have this overly obsession with the sled like
or
he
anything
did.
of that nature. Yeah.
No,
you're absolutely right. They needed to settle that beef, but the problem was the way that they settle it by going off a giant death ramp. It seemed too out of place for what that franchise does.
Well, I get what it is. They're trying to give Flick the ability to, like you said, they're squashing that beef. Plus, Flick has to show that he's a man because he got,
because his tongue was stuck to a pole.
Because he was humiliated because of that whole thing, right? And it was Schwartz who put him up to it. So that was the whole, and this thing has lasted now for 33 years. Is kind of the whole joke, right?
See, I would have done something different because we have this thing in Canada, and I'm pretty sure
I agree.
You guys have it as well in the Northwest and Midwest area. We have this thing called polar bears, and these are guys that get in their swimsuits and then jump into the cold water, and they just do that during the holidays. It's a thing. They do it up in Hamilton by Hutch's restaurant near Lake Ontario. That's where my parents would take the several-hour drive out to go watch these people of all ages in their swimsuits, and men and women. Sometimes they were in full, like, one piece or bikinis or just trunks, and they just rush into the water, swim around in the cold, and rush out.
Yeah, we have what's called the polar bear plunge around here. Yeah.
Yeah, it basically is like that. But I would have done it to a point where Flick double dog dares Schwartz to do the polar bear plunge in this one lake, but it's frozen over. So what they do is they cut a hole into it, and so he jumps in, but he gets frozen from the waist down in there, and they have to get the cops and the fire department to.
Yeah, that'd been kind of something like that. Otherwise, what I would have done, and I don't know if you could work with this as a writer, but the one thing that kind of bothered me, I was like, oh, they never addressed that, which we brought up earlier, which is basically, was it Schwartz got an ass beaten because
because of Ralphie's mom.
Because of Ralphie lying on his ass. So like it would have been funnier if you had like them sitting there in the bar, they're, it's reminiscing. They haven't seen each other since high school, what have you. And then Ralphie brings up the tongue on the pole business. And so that gets Flick starting to go after Schwartz. And then Schwartz like, hey, wait a minute. You're the one who told your mom that I told you the fuck word or whatever, they put in there. And they get into like this argument, and they have to, like, all three of them have like this like moment of they have to resolve this whole thing. Like that was what I was like,
balance the scales. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, wait a minute, they should have had him call him out on that shit. That's some low shit. Like, him like, yeah, you're pretty low. You got him in, you never took the blame for him sticking his tongue to the steel pole. And he's like, yeah, well, you're the one who called who told me they could have done something to that anyway. But moving forward from there, like, yeah, the movie plays out. So then they're stuck with a situation where they got no gifts. They got no money.
Well, we don't want to get too far ahead because they do the shopping. And then
we got ahead of the shopping. Yeah.
They use eggs to create what's called the radiator souffle. So it cools down the radiator and seals up parts of it so they can make their way home. They run out of eggs, so they have to stop by a park, wait for the radiator to cool down. And as the kids are playing in the snow, Ralphie realizes like, hey, you're not making snowballs right. You know how to do this, don't you guys? And he's like, no, you got to pack it. So he teaches them how to form a snowball, and he throws it. And then the kids just start throwing snowballs at him. And then he gets into a fight. And his wife, who had sprained her ankle earlier, about to go skating, but slips on the porch. She gets drunk while Ralphie's getting all the gifts because she can't move around in crutches. So she doesn't feel any of the pain of her ankle. So she starts joining in the fight. And it's her and the son versus Ralphie and the daughter. And they're having fun throwing snowballs. And then Mark, kind of bets his dad that he's not going to hit him. And the daughter climbs up onto the tree trunk to be the cheerleader for the dad. And Ralphie's hiding behind it as packing a snowball. And then he just rises up and whips it straight, and it hits his daughter right in the face. And she just drops over like a rag doll. And it's a beautifully done comedic scene that just makes you laugh. And then his voiceover is like, oh my God, I just killed my daughter. And he's freaking out, and he's so sad, sorry. And he's coddling her, and he's like taking her to the hospital. He's like, it's gonna be okay, baby.
Yeah, and almost every parent's had that moment where you're having a good time with your kid, and then something goes wrong. Something
goes wrong, your kid's injured.
Yeah, it's happened. And yes, this is another one that reminded me, my dad, like whenever, yeah.
Oh, the phone calls at the bar were great. Yeah.
Yes, that is a real thing.
Nope, not here. Sorry. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah. Oh, shit. So we had a super chat from Mecca J who says, you think Gene Shepard would have liked A Christmas Story Christmas? I think so.
I do too. I think he would really have liked it.
Yeah, I think he would have got behind it. It would have been nice to have him as the narrator still. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alarm going off for some reason.
But no, then, yeah, so while they're at the hospital, the trunk pops open and somebody steals their gifts, which is horrible. I'm surprised that Ralphie didn't go to the police station to report it. But I think the reason he didn't do that is because you have another gimmick with the police later that comes into play that has far more of an effect.
Yeah. And not only that, at this point, at that time, Ralphie probably knew that the cops would have just given more shit than anything. Because at that point, they're like, oh, yeah, what are we going to do?
You filled out a missing items report. There you go. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. You're the dumbass that left the fucking trunk unlocked, Einstein. You know, like
It's like, it's
good
not
job
unlocked.
fucking up Christmas for your kids.
It's a bum trunk. I tried to get fixed. I can't get it fixed yet.
Well, then maybe you should have fixed it instead of buying all those gifts, huh?
Exactly. Like, you could have had a lot of fun arguments with that.
Yeah, but they didn't need that. So yeah, I agree with you.
They didn't need that. So now they're just trying to figure out, like, the kids don't know, how do we break it to the kids that they're not going to get everything they want for Christmas? They only got like $20 in 1970s dollars to do. Oh, that's the other part too. Seeing the prices for the toys at the time, and you're like, wow, things were affordable back then.
Yeah. Well, it was.
You can ring up a sled for $11 and change.
Basically him having, what did he have? Like 20 some dollars. That was like basically like $100 some dollars.
The rest of the year. Yeah.
Basically now, or actually a little bit more than that, probably.
Something. Yeah. I mean,
probably closer to 200, maybe. Not quite, but
it definitely would have gone further than 21.
Absolutely.
Today.
And that scene reminded me so much of the first episode of The Simpsons. Do you remember that? The Christmas episode?
The Christmas episode, yeah.
Yes. And I'm not gonna give it shit for like ripping it off or anything. I'm not saying that. It just, that element of it really just kind of gave me a nostalgic Christmassy kind of, because I'm sure that this is not the first. The Simpsons couldn't have been the first time that probably had been.
No, I'm sure there's a number of other stories where the
sitcoms and shit like that.
Stone has stolen our Christmas gifts. We're not going to have a Christmas. I mean, it's the Grinch who stole Christmas, essentially.
Basically, yeah.
For the Whovians.
So to me, that was just like and of course, that's what I said and of course, because I knew that was, like you said, it was very obviously set up, but
yeah,
of course, but it's almost like it has to happen that way.
But it also, the resolution to that story becomes with such a strong punch. An emotional kick.
Well, that's what I mean. Like when you get to the end, you're like, it has to be that way, right? Like,
yes, because you have this whole subplot with like decorating the tree, and like the daughter says, "Oh, we always put an angel on top," and it's like, "Well, here in home, and we put stars, and if you don't have a star, Santa don't come." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then the star breaks on Christmas Eve, and Ralphie's not going to disappoint his kids any further, so he's on a mission to get another star, and everything's closed. But he goes by Flick's bar, and in the bar is a star on the tree. So
instead of calling Flick for some dumb reason,
he just sneaks in through the back door, like through the window above the back door, takes the tree, the star, leaves a note, and apologizes for the window because it broke when it closed in on itself.
Yeah, he wasn't meaning to close the window.
Yeah, and
crack the window.
Yeah, exactly. And then as soon as he leaves, he gets caught by a police officer.
And this is where I kind of called this, but it's perfect.
It is perfect, yeah.
And of course, who the cop is.
Who is the cop? It's the bully. It's Zach Ward back as Scut Farkus.
Yes.
And he plays it so menacingly.
It's brilliant because, of course, Ralphie's on the instant offensive.
He's like, last time I saw him, I was beating the crap out of him.
Which is funny. Yeah.
So you have this awesome scene where Ralphie's in the back of the cop car and Scut Farkus is, reminiscing. and we get that scene where Ralphie's like, what's going to be my future? I'm going to be in jail for the rest of my life. And then he does the fantasy of 10 years in the future. And his son's got a British accent and he's an 80s punker, and his daughter's pregnant teen with a bum eye. And his wife still looks good. And then you get this tense moment where Ralphie's just in his head like, oh my God, I'm going to die. He's going to kill me. He's going to do something to me. He drives past the police station. He's like, hey, didn't we just go past the police station? Like, oh, don't worry about that. And then on the squawk, the dispatch is like, hey, Farkus, where are you? And he just turns it off. And Ralphie's freaking out.
Like, he's gonna kill me.
Listen, I needed the tree for Christmas. It's for my family. And he's just And then he's like, we're here. This is it, right? He's like, what? Like, this is your home? And he looks over and he's outside his house. And that's when you get this really touching scene where Farkus is like, listen, I was a nightmare. My kids are worse than me. And, when you beat my ass, that made me reevaluate things. And now I'm a cop. And I owe that thanks all to you. So here's your star. Have a Merry Christmas. And he's like, if you're lucky, if I didn't take that call, you'd be rotting in jail right now.
And I think he insinuates that the kids that are being bullying his kid is Farkus's as well.
Yeah, he says that they have a snowmobile, and that's another subplot, which is actually brilliant, which we'll talk about a little later. That he gets the star, puts it on the tree. He's talking with his mom, and the fuse goes out, and Robbie's like, "Oh, I'll get it," and she's like, "No, I got to learn to do this. I'll do it. You go to bed." So they go to bed, and they wake up Christmas morning. And there's a ton of gifts under the tree. And this is where, like, me as just a fan and someone who has family members that do this, I get choked up for it because it's a beautiful moment.
Well, it was brilliantly done, and it pays perfect homage to the first film.
Where you find out that Dad had bought, like Grandpa, the old man, he bought all the gifts before he passed away, and he had them in the cellar, ready to go. And that was his last gift to his family, and it's so sweet.
It's perfectly done. And then you get the
like everything that the grandkids wanted, they get. The stuff that Ralphie wants, he gets. Mom, they all get
a great bit with the daughter.
It's the beautiful Christmas thing. It's like, yep. Even
and then it leads into that crescendo.
Being the best Christmas guy, yeah.
And then it leads into the crescendo, which is him writing the obituary, which becomes a Christmas story. It's
a Christmas story, called
brilliantly set up. It's done so perfectly well, and I couldn't have wrote it better myself. I don't know if you could have either. Script, like,
no, it dovetails.
That final act is just brilliant.
It is. It really does make the movie. Like, up to that point, you're still having a great time, but as soon as you get that moment, it's like, oh, you just tugged at all the right heartstrings, you sons of bitches. Thank you so much. And
that's what bothered me about, like, why didn't they put this in theaters? Because I think they'd have had a nice hit on their hands.
This would have killed in theaters. This would have done way better than Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think it would have been received much better, let's say.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Received financially, I don't think so, no, but received much better than that. People would have been, I can't see people not wanting to see this movie in theaters.
And then you could have dropped it on HBOMax on Christmas Eve.
Sure. It's got a decent rating, like 70% average among a lot of people that have seen it so far. But it's a really well done, sweet Christmas story. Hits all the notes that you want. Going back to the bully stuff, the bullies in town, they have a snowmobile and they just drive over snowmen. And they destroy Mark and Julie's snowman that they make out in the front yard. And then they get into a couple other things. And then Mark and Julie come up with a plan to get revenge. And there's this stump in the front by the mailbox that can't be moved. And so they build a snowman around it. and the kids crash their snowmobile and destroy the snowmobile into it. And one of them was so terrified that they wet their pants. And so they run away humiliated. And Bumpus grabs the parts of the snowmobile and is like, I got snowmobile now.
I got a snowmobile now. Well, speaking of snowmen, we actually have a snowman joining us. Welcome, Snowdove.
Oh, hey, man.
Hey, Merry Christmas, Tom. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Well, there's a reason I brought you in here is because, of course, you were hanging out in the chat. But I'm glad you did show up because I was thinking about asking if you wanted to come in near the end here and talk a little bit about this because I know this movie actually kind of hit home for you pretty hard this year. I'll let you have the stage on that, my friend.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for the invite, Tom. I appreciate it. And
yeah.
Hail to everybody in the chat. Good to see you guys. Got some friends in the chat, so smash that like button, of course. But yeah, unfortunately, my father did pass away a couple weeks ago. It was pretty rough, for the fam. Unfortunately, we, kind of seen it coming. He was having some health issues. It was kind of a downward spiral, but this movie came out right around that same time, and I was looking forward to it. I remember Tom, I think you got to see it first.
Pre-warned you. I did.
And so I didn't want to get my hopes up too high. But you were correct when you told me that, it kind of starts out slow, but it picks up. Ending is fantastic. Slam dunk, I think, on the ending.
Well, I was warning you more so because I knew going into this that this was going to probably hit home. Like I said, not to for lack of a better term, and because like I said, I'm sorry to hear about the passing of your father, and as soon as you know, that happened, and then this movie come out, and I saw you, and I was like, yeah, before you watch it, just be prepared.
Right.
it's
Yeah. No, it
it's
was
gonna
definitely
get you.
yeah, it
It
was a good
does,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll get you even if you're not experiencing loss. You know, watching
No,
this.
but I really wanted to give you a heads up because of that. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that because I kind of braced myself and I watched it just myself the first time and then watched it again with my son. But you know, he didn't get the same reaction as I did. He was more into the jokes and the kids and you know the stuff like that, which was great. And so feeling you know, compared to the first one, it's never going to match up, you know, but I like that they tried. You know, they gave it a good effort, and by bringing back a lot of the original cast, really helped set the mood. And the best part of this movie is the fact that they really built the atmosphere correctly and kept the time frame correctly. Like I really love the just the parts where you know they're buying all the kids presents for less than $50.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those
we're
are the
just
days,
talking
right?
about that. Yeah.
That's just crazy because you know I spent I don't too much money already this year and on my kid, but it's a feel good movie. I think you can watch them back to back okay and enjoy the whole thing. I don't is TNT going to start doing that now? You know, throwing them back.
Actually, this year they're showing Elf, I guess, instead of A Christmas Story, believe it or not.
Wow. Okay. Well, Elf's becoming a classic, I guess. Yeah. It's not my
So I don't know if
generation.
they're going to alternate or if they're just retiring it or if it's just because the new movie's on HBO Max, they want to leave it on HBO Max or what the deal
Maybe
is.
it's
I
a
have no
rights
idea.
issues where they lost syndication rights for it.
Well, it's all owned by Warner Brothers, so in that
Yeah.
part, I don't think. And Elf is also owned, well, it's a new line, but it's Warner Brothers. But yeah,
Mhm.
and when Christmas Story was in the MGM acquisition through Turner, so that's why Warner owns the
Yep.
story now.
Well, just make sure you guys got your physical media. That's what I always say. You know, that way,
Yeah,
you know, you never have to worry about not seeing your favorite Christmas movies.
no, but I'm pretty sure it's on HBO Max along with the new one, so that's probably the reason why they just didn't want to
Yeah,
overdo
Well,
it.
if it,
I would get this on DVD or Blu-ray if it ever hits physical
The
because
4K, oh,
right.
the new one, yeah,
Yeah.
I want to get it. I was gonna say the 4K for the first one just came out and it looks beautiful. It's a very very good transfer, so I can't recommend it highly enough on that part. But yeah, I hope they release the second one on Blu-ray. They probably will. Warner's been fairly decent about that, so maybe not till next year, but like next Christmas, I mean, they might.
Oh yeah, I would assume. So I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, you never know with some of these these companies, but like one of the things that because I can definitely empathize with Snowed Up because I also lost my father many years ago, and actually, A Christmas Story was one of his favorite Christmas movies. So I just think like, oh, if he were alive today and he saw this, he would have loved it just as much because it hits all the emotional things, and it's also like where A Christmas Story like any baby boomer can relate to Ralphie at that point. And then A Christmas Story Christmas, any baby boomer could probably relate to the dads of the 70s at that time too. Like there's a lot of overlapping stuff where it's like this is for that generation, but it's the content is so accessible that like I picked up on it and I absolutely loved it. And I'm born in the mid 80s, you know, and raised in the 90s. So I I have a close connection to that time period, but nowhere near as close as you know my father or my uncles or even like my older cousins did at that time. But it just has it has all the ingredients needed to make a really great Christmas movie and a really great follow up and tribute to its original film. And I that's a really nice thing to see. You don't get that too often.
Yeah, and there's no political messaging, no woke stuff that I noticed, anything crazy or weird like that. It kept to the storyline, kept to the characters, and you know try to produce its own story. I feel the Ralphie trying to be an author thing was pretty heavy and centric of the whole movie. Maybe a little too much, but you know, like I said, it's got its flaws. It's the first one was a perfect movie. I'm just old enough where I got to go to the theater to see that original movie, and God, I was like 5 or 6. And I don't remember much of it. The only part that sticks out in my mind is the Santa Claus scene, you know, and it just scared the shit out of me. But but it left an impact, and so it became a tradition to watch that movie every year at my house. So I'm glad they did this, and I'm glad they got everybody back together, and put this together for us, and just kind of paid homage to the fans. And even though it's not perfect, it's a nice little tribute to the original.
Absolutely. It was a mistake from them to put it only on HBO Max. They should have given it the actual release.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying they would have made a ton of money, but I think they would have done fairly well. And I think word of mouth would have helped this movie get through the holiday. And like I said, they could have ran it in theaters and then dropped it on HBO Max on Christmas Eve or whatever. And
yeah,
I think they would have done very well. It'd
be up against Psycho.
Brain.
It'd be up against Psycho Santa right now, and I don't know if I'm going to go watch that movie, but there's not much out there.
Doing very well, I guess.
Is it? It's the only Christmas movie we got this year so far.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think they would have, if they would have dropped this in theaters over the Thanksgiving weekend, I think this movie would have made 50 million, 60 million by now or better.
I think would have had longer legs than some of the other movies we've gotten.
I think it would have made at least close to 100 million by the time Christmas rolled around. Through, if you dropped it on Thanksgiving and let it play that long, I think it would have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
So that's a loss on their part. But the best thing is, I guess you guys can watch it right now on HBO Max if you haven't seen it already. Hopefully we didn't spoil it too much for you. I saw, I think D-Bud said, "No, now I got to watch it." Well, hopefully we didn't ruin it for you.
You know, you'll still enjoy it because it's not just the jokes, it's the overall journey and how they connect all the scenes and bits together. It's really charming. In fact, we even left out a bunch of other stuff. So you'll still have some surprises.
Yeah, well, this is the first time we've also talked about two movies in the same show, so it's kind of difficult to juggle both of them. But I think we did okay with 90 minutes here, and unless Snow had anything to add to it or Script, you wanted to bring anything else up on the subject?
No, I think I'm good. So the floor is yours, Snow.
I think it's just a nice little addition to the Christmas spirit, and it's an extra movie that you can throw in your rotation of your favorite Christmas movies. You know, I'll put it in there with Gremlins and Die Hard and all my favorites that I like to watch on Christmas. And Christmas Vacation is still probably my number one comedy, but the Muppet Christmas Carol is still my number one favorite Christmas movie.
The one with Alistair Sims?
The Muppet Christmas Carol with Michael Caine.
Oh, right? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Michael Caine's the perfect Scrooge, as far as I'm concerned.
He's a really good Scrooge. Yeah.
Yeah. He nailed it. All right. And with that...
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I just had to deal with something for a second there. And I got a cat who's making a bunch of noise.
I was trying to do my Andre impression, but I failed.
And with that.
No,
thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I just double check and make sure I don't think we missed any super chats. We did get the last one. So thank you so much for listening, guys. We appreciate it. We kind of have an idea what next week is, but we're going to save it for now. I don't know for sure if we'll be able to do it or not. So I don't want to make any promises yet, but we do have a couple more, at least Christmas movies, I think, on the docket. So stay tuned for those. We'll let you know what those are soon. Snow, you got anything going on you want to plug real quick on your way out the door?
Oh, yeah. Head on over to Snowdub channel later on. We're doing the Tuck and Roll show. Tom, you're welcome to pop in if you're not doing anything later.
I'll do my best.
Same with you, Script. And we're just going to be hanging out talking about strong female leads and how it's kind of taken over our movies lately. So puppets are going to go off tonight. Should be fun.
Script, anything you got to plug on your way out?
Other than I think I'll be talking more about this movie on Nina Infinity's channel tomorrow night.
Oh, really?
Which is going to be a lot of fun. My evening, I've got boyfriend responsibilities to do this evening, so catch some replays. Not like that. I'm sure to catch some replays of a bunch of shows tomorrow morning while I'm doing my chores. But outside of that, just follow me on Twitter, see where I will be at. Much appreciated.
I actually just got this Christmas Carol in the mail, Steph. George C. Scott one. It was like on sale for like $5. I think it's like 84 came out. All right, with that, we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a fun time. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.